YouTube, welcome to The Perspective. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the United States withdrawal from Afghanistan. Now, first and foremost, I want to say that Joe Biden completely 100% made the right decision withdrawing from Afghanistan. I mean, this is a war that's gone on for 20 years. For 20 years. And initially, the idea behind going into the war was supposed to be that because of the 9/11 terrorist attack, we needed to respond, which seemed legit. But there is no reason for a war where one side is the strongest military in the history of humankind to continue for 20 years. Clearly, there were things going on inside of the war. The mission expanded and things got out of hand. So I congratulate, and I think it's a great idea that Joe Biden decided that it's time to get out, because the last few presidents, the last couple of presidents, Obama and Trump, both said that they were going to pull out of Afghanistan, and both did not. Now, the crazy part about this to me is that when it was actually time to go to war, one of the craziest things is that the media was completely on board with going to war. They were completely on board with it. But every time that Obama has talked about going to war, mainstream media has been against it, pressuring to not leave war. And Obama ended up not going out of the war. Now, I don't think that was the only reason why he didn't go out of the war. I also think that just the Washington insiders clouded his judgment, and he ended up not pulling out of war. There was probably a lot of reasons why you should not leave war. A lot of reasons presented to him why this was a bad decision, and he ended up not doing it. Same thing with Trump. Now, another crazy thing to me is that Trump came along as ending forever wars, and this is the first time that I've seen in my lifetime a popular right-wing conservative Republican figure raise up and actually rally the right against these forever wars. So there were a lot of people talking about America first, we need to get out of these wars, and they were for that position. But now that Biden's in office, you do still see a lot of them, talk about and discuss about the need. A lot of the Trump supporters talk about the need to leave out, but the neoconservative establishment in the Republican Party has been completely against this idea from the very beginning. I mean, if you look at Fox News, Fox News is having a meltdown over this idea of leaving Afghanistan. And it's not just Fox News, it's also CNN, it's MSNBC. Everybody's fear mongering over what would be the outcome of leaving the Afghanistan war. Meanwhile, we've spent a ton of money and a ton of wasted lives just to leave. So the question is, are we staying forever, or are we going to accept that there are some bad things that will happen in Afghanistan if we leave, but also that has little, if nothing, to do with us? And in my opinion, it is better to leave, because what we're starting to realize with these wars that go on forever and ever is that they actually decrease the amount of security in the United States. If you're going to have a war, a retaliatory war against an aggressor, the defeat should be fast. The defeat should be, especially against an enemy like this, the defeat should be fast. The defeat should be completely obvious. It should be clear which side won, clear destruction, that kind of thing. It should not be a prolonged war where we're constantly spending money. The mission changes from getting Osama bin Laden to nation building to establishing rights and a democracy in another country. That's not what the war is supposed to be about. But if you listen to the neocons, if you listen to the people, the Ben Shapiros, it's like we're supposed to stay there forever. They don't have an endpoint. They don't have a goal in mind of what we're supposed to do there. And I feel like that's the common idea of what the people in DC, the media elite, have accepted as what we're supposed to do. I think it's a bad idea. So I do think it's great that Joe Biden is planning on getting out of this war. It was a long time coming. I think it's awesome that he is standing strong in his opinion, despite the pressure from the media. So yes, but what we're seeing now is that the Taliban, and I'm just looking at my computer here, we're seeing now that the Taliban is closing in on cities, and they're doing this a lot faster than what people thought, a lot more aggressive. and there were supposed to be peace deals between the government in Afghanistan and the United States, and then also the Taliban. But who really thought, my question is, who really ever thought that the Taliban would settle for peace? I mean, I was just watching a documentary on Vice that the interviewer was asking, the government there, did you really think that, the Taliban would settle for a democracy or some kind of peace deal? I never thought that. I mean, the Taliban is an evil organization. I mean, they're not interested in peace. They're interested in a radical agenda. They're interested in accomplishing that agenda at any cost. They have an ideology, and it does not include democracy and all these different things. And another practical issue that you can think about on top of everything else is there really a framework in Afghanistan for democracy? Like, even if you were to successfully establish a democracy there, how long would it last? Is there a framework in people's mind? In the United States, there was a framework in the beginning to lay the foundation of democracy. There was the people that came to the United States, the settlers, the colonists that came to the United States. They were already had it in their mind at some point that they did not like the British government and the tyranny that brought. And that set the framework for them to introduce a new concept and a new set of ideas of how government should be operated, and to continuously over generations embed those ideas in people. The idea that you're going to come in this culture that's completely different from our culture, and within 20 years create, and I mean, by the neocons measurement, we're supposed to stay there until however long it takes. The neoconservatives believe that, and somehow transform this into a representative, thriving democracy. I mean, I think it's absurd. So while I am just as angry and just as hurt by seeing what is obviously an aggressive Taliban closing in on the fact that the United States government is leaving, the fact that the United States military is leaving that area, they're closing in on it, and it's obvious that they're going to take the capital there soon, and the media continuously fear-mongering over it. While I'm upset against all of that, I don't think that the military should stay there. I think that what we have to do is usher in a new time in the United States, that we only go to war when we are aggressed against, or there's a clear sign that aggression is going to be taking place, or some imminent danger and threat that would eventually lead to the United States being attacked. That is the only reason why the military should be used. And if we set that as precedent, and if we set peace as first and foremost our goal, diplomacy as first and foremost our goal with other countries, and we accept the fact that we cannot just coerce other countries, because when you decide that I'm going to coerce another country, you ignite the radicalism in those other countries, and you make us less secure. And now we have to extend more resources and more money to cover up the fire that we keep creating. No, instead, we accept the fact that we're going to have to peacefully interact with the world. We can't force our way on everything else. A new mentality of what our foreign policy is supposed to be about, then you won't have to see and feel guilty about leaving out of these countries that we've been in and seeing what's probably going to be the atrocities that are going to take place once we pull out of Afghanistan. So, like I said, the Taliban is clearly closing in. There are now the United States is sending military troops back in, but they're not in there. They're supposedly not in there to stay. They're in there to evacuate civilians and residents that live in the embassy that is the United States Embassy in Afghanistan, to get them out of there, which I think is totally appropriate. We don't want to leave anyone behind. I think that something that would be really, really helpful is emergency residency status for Afghans who helped us, who believed in that vision. I think they should be able to come to this country. It looks like that's up in the air. I think that itself is brutal. If I was in charge, there would be some kind of emergency program where you could come and seek refuge in the United States and and you could skip to the front of the line. That is a situation where we let them to believe that we were going to be there and that we were going to establish some kind of democracy in their system. When I heard the interactions between them, it sounded a little bit more complicated than that. Like you had the Afghan government that was supposed to meet some conditions of the United States being there and supporting them, which they did not meet all of those conditions. I think that that while the government is to blame for that, the average resident just believed in the idea that the United States is going to be here. They're going to bring a democracy. There's finally going to be peace in our country. And unfortunately, we weren't able to do that for them. So instead, you can come here. I think that's totally fine. But that seems like it's not going to happen.